Welcome to Cheat Masters. Let's dive into today's story. When Amy first mentioned joining a gym, I didn't think much of it. She had been talking about getting in shape for months. So when she finally signed up, I was happy for her. Good for you, I told her. Just don't turn into one of those fitness fanatics who live on kale and protein shakes. She laughed. Don't worry, I'm doing this for myself. Amy had always been independent. If she wanted to work on her fitness and feel better about herself, who was I to question it? But gradually, things started changing in ways I couldn't ignore. At first, she worked out casually, but soon her gym sessions became more intense. A few times a week turned into daily visits, sometimes even twice a day. And when she was home, it felt like she wasn't really there. Our evenings, once filled with conversation and shared TV shows, became quieter. She was always on her phone, texting someone or watching fitness videos. One evening, I finally brought it up. We don't really hang out much anymore. Amy barely looked up from her phone. What do you mean? We're hanging out right now. I gestured toward the screen. You've been glued to that thing for an hour. She sighed and finally put her phone down. I'm just looking up strength training stuff. Marcus says I should focus on building muscle instead of just cardio. There was again Marcus. At first, his name popped up in passing. Marcus says my squat form is improving. Marcus thinks I should eat more protein. Marcus showed me a great way to relieve muscle soreness. But soon, he was in every conversation. I also started noticing little changes. Amy's wardrobe shifted. Tighter leggings, more fitted tops. Not just at the gym, but all the time. She even started wearing makeup to her workouts, which she had never done before. Who puts on lipstick and eyeliner just to lift weights? Then came the nights out. She had always had a couple of close friends, but suddenly she was going out all the time. She'd return home late, sometimes past midnight, smelling like perfume and something else I couldn't quite place. One night, I asked casually, "You've been going out a lot lately." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Stephen, can I not have a life outside this house?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" she snapped. "You've just been different lately." She crossed her arms. "So because I'm taking care of myself and having fun, it's a problem?" I didn't want an argument, so I dropped it, but it kept gnawing at me. Then things escalated. One evening over dinner, Amy said, "Marcus is going to start training me at home." I frowned. "Here." "Yeah." She answered like it was the most normal thing. "It makes sense. That way, I don't have to wait for equipment at the gym." I took a sip of my drink, uneasy. "I don't know, Amy. Inviting your personal trainer into our home, it feels a little off." She laughed. "Oh my God. Stephen, he's just a trainer. It's not a big deal." I didn't push it, but something about the whole situation unsettled me. The first session happened while I was at work. I only knew because when I got home, I noticed the living room had been rearranged. The coffee table was pushed against the wall, and one of my heavier dumbbells sat in the middle of the room. "Did you work out here today?" I asked. Amy nodded, sipping from a large water bottle. "Yeah, it was great. Marcus says I'm making real progress." Again with the Marcus says. But I let it go. Then, on the days I worked from home, I got to witness their sessions firsthand. Sitting in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through my laptop, I watched. Marcus was younger. He was taller than I expected. Somewhere in his mid-30s, built like a model with a confident ease about him. His smile was relaxed, almost too much so. He cracked jokes effortlessly, laughing freely, and Amy laughed right along with him. Around him, she seemed different, more at ease, more playful. At first, nothing seemed outright inappropriate. He was just a trainer guiding his client. His hands would hover over her lower back or shoulders, adjusting her form as needed. But it was the way she reacted that made my stomach tighten. When he placed his hands on her hips to correct her squat stance, she giggled. When he teased her about her endurance, she lightly smacked his arm. Small moments, but small moments accumulate. A few days later, I heard about a break-in at a neighbor's house. The idea of someone lurking, waiting for an opportunity, unnerved me. It seemed like a good enough reason to take precautions. For security reasons, I decided to install discrete cameras outside. I didn't tell Amy. There was no real need, or so I convinced myself. The following day, while she was out, I bought a set of motion-activated cameras and placed them carefully. One at the front door, another in the backyard. I kept it subtle, just enough to keep an eye on things. Over the next few days, I checked the footage periodically, expecting to see nothing unusual. And for a while, that's exactly what I got. Amy leaving for the gym, running errands, the occasional delivery driver dropping off a package. Everything appeared normal. Then I saw Marcus. At first, it wasn't surprising. She was still training at home, so of course, he was there, but something felt off. Their session started stretching longer. First an hour, then an hour and a half, then nearly 2 or even 3 hours. What were they doing for that long? I started monitoring the footage more closely. Then, one day, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I watched as Marcus left the house, walking down the driveway as usual. But then he stopped. He patted his pockets, turned around, and walked back to the door. Amy was still standing there, watching him leave. When he approached, she hesitated, then ducked inside quickly before returning with something. Probably something he had forgotten. She handed it to him, and then they both paused. They didn't just stand there absent-mindedly. They scanned their surroundings, not in a casual, lost-in-thought way. No, they were making sure no one was watching. And then she kissed him. It was brief, a second, maybe less. But it happened. I froze, staring at the screen, my stomach twisting. My mind scrambled for a reasonable explanation, but there wasn't one. This wasn't a friendly gesture. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate practice, like it had happened before. Marcus turned and walked away without a word. Amy stepped back inside as if nothing had occurred. But for me, everything had changed. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment replaying in my head. Over and over again, that fleeting second had shattered any trust one had left. The next morning, while Amy was out running errands, I made a decision. I went to an electronics store and bought more cameras, this time for inside the house. I installed them carefully, making sure they were well hidden, one in the kitchen, another in the living room, and the last one in the bedroom, the one place I didn't even want to consider, but had to. And then I waited. The next day, Marcus came over again. A deep knot twisted in my stomach, my grip tightening on my phone until my fingers ached. Then she reached for him, and he pulled her in, wrapping his arms around her. They held each other, kissing like it was the most natural thing in the world, like this was their routine. A moment later, they stood and made their way to the bedroom. I slammed my phone onto the desk, so hard I thought I might have cracked the screen. My chest tightened, each breath heavy with a mix of fury and devastation. I had suspected, I had feared, but seeing it with my own eyes, undeniable proof, was like a blade to the heart. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was real. My wife was betraying me with her trainer in our own home. I wasn't going to let this slide. I needed to catch them in the act. 2 days later, I called in sick to work. Amy believed I was at the office, but instead, I was sitting in a coffee shop, my phone propped against my cup, watching the live feed from my hidden cameras. My stomach was in knots, my hands gripping the table as I waited. At exactly 1:30 p.m., Marcus arrived. Amy greeted him with a smile. The moment he stepped inside, they kissed without hesitation, without uncertainty. It was practiced, familiar. Then, without wasting a moment, they disappeared into the bedroom. That was all I needed. I grabbed my keys, my pulse pounding in my ears, and drove home. Instead of pulling into the driveway, I parked a few houses away. They had to believe they were still safe. My breath was steady, but my hands trembled as I approached the front door. I unlocked it silently. The house was quiet, but I knew exactly where they were. I moved down the hallway, each step slow, deliberate. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. There they were, Amy in our bed with him. She gasped, yanking the sheets over herself as if that could somehow undo what I had just seen. Marcus scrambled, his face draining of color, his hands fumbling for his clothes in a panic. Amy's wide eyes were frozen in shock. I stepped inside, my voice low and firm. "I go to work, and this is what you do?" I gestured toward them. "You're screwing your trainer in our house? In our bed?" Amy stammered, "Stephen." I cut her off. "Don't. Just don't." Marcus, half-dressed, his hands shaking, stammered, "Look, man, I stepped forward, fists clenched. "Shut up. Get out of my house. Now." He didn't wait. He grabbed his shoes and bolted, nearly tripping over himself as he fled. A second later, I heard the front door slam shut. Amy sat there, still gripping the sheets, as if they could shield her from what she had done. I let the silence stretch between us, heavy and suffocating. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Stephen, please." I shook my head. "Save it. Pack your things and get out." Tears welled in her eyes. "Stephen, don't do this." I let out a bitter laugh. "Don't do this? You did this. You destroyed everything." She opened her mouth, desperate to argue, to explain, but she knew. There was nothing she could say to change this. I turned away, my voice cold and final. "Be gone by the time I get back." Without looking at her again, I walked out of the room, out of the house, and didn't look back. The next morning, I wasted no time. I got up, got dressed, and went straight to a lawyer. There was no discussion, no second chances. Amy didn't deserve one. I made sure she got nothing. No house, no car, no savings. She had thrown it all away. And Marcus? I made sure everyone knew. Word spread fast. His clients started canceling. No one wanted a trainer who slept with married women in their own homes. Within a week, the gym let him go. Last I heard, he was struggling to find work. And I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. He deserved worse. A few months later, the divorce was finalized. Amy didn't fight it. She knew she had no leg to stand on. She moved into a tiny apartment on the other side of town. Alone. I thought that was the end of it. Then, one evening, she showed up at my door. I opened it to see her standing there, nothing like the confident, carefree woman she used to be. Her eyes were red, her hair unkempt, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "Stephen, please," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I just stared at her, silent. Her voice broke as she spoke. "I made a mistake." Tears streamed down her face. "I was stupid. I was selfish. Please, Stephen, I still love you." I exhaled slowly, my expression unreadable. "Leave." Her face crumpled. "Stephen, please, just give me a chance." I shook my head. "Don't ever come back." She stood there, frozen, her breath shaky, her eyes pleading. But finally, she turned and walked away. I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door, locked it, and stood there for a moment in the quiet. And for the first time, I felt free. I looked ahead, ready for whatever the future held. Thank you for watching.